Hey, we're back with Grand Tactician Civil War Union Campaign. And in this episode, in the last couple episodes, we fought two quick battles in Northern Virginia. Both of them went our way, and we've kind of got the Confederates on the run. That said, I'm not sure that our army is really in much of a position to capitalize on that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But just kind of an overview, not much change. We've begun and are going to slowly increase the effectiveness of our blockade of the Confederacy with 6 seagoing squadrons spread along the coast here. Already talked about that. Out here across the Mississippi and the Trans-Mississippi, the Army of the Missouri is headed over to St. Louis, where they're going to do some fort building, kind of consolidate our control on this stretch of the Mississippi River and make sure that this important city is not threatened. In Indiana, we have started building an army of the Ohio, under Grant's command, which, when they're ready, will begin operations in the Kentucky-Tennessee area. They are not ready yet. There's only one guy on station. That's Grant. And all of his infantry and artillery is still getting recruited, organizing, and then have to get to Evansville. Some of these are pretty close. 15 days for this brigade, 12 for this. 8 days for this brigade, and a lot of that has to do with where are they coming from. Like Buell's brigade, 15 days. He's coming from Wisconsin. Sumner from Kentucky, so basically right there. That's why he's going to be there quicker. But then we've also got a brigade coming all the way from Massachusetts, so it's going to be almost a month before the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Division is there. So they're going to take a while to coalesce, if you will. This army also is armed with just whatever muskets they can get their hands on and, personal knives for melee. So they're not equipped very well, not yet. We just don't have the rifles to do much more than that for this army. So things are just kind of in a build-up phase for the West. And in the Appalachian Theater, what is Western Virginia for now, and hopefully will become West Virginia, a separate state, we're just building a fort here, lock in this rail and road corridor across the north. It's McClellan's Army of the Kanawha. And then we've got a little 1,000-soldier force of militia who have just crossed back over into Ohio to gain some readiness. And eventually I think they're going to come down here and begin pushing down this corridor toward Charleston. Not with a view to getting in any fights, but just to establish control over supply depots and eventually, hopefully, take Charleston by default, rather than getting any actual fights. And then that leaves the East. We've had 2 battles. One was on the 10th of July, and then one just now finished in the last episode, right down the road here. The battles of Manassas Junction and the Battle of Culpeper Courthouse. Both of these, the Army of the Potomac was defeated in the first battle. They retreated down here to, Gordonsville. And the Army of the Shenandoah, the 2nd Confederate Army, is also retreating. I am pretty sure he's going to retreat right down here to where the Army of the Confederate Army of the Potomac is. So our Army of Northeastern Virginia has won 2 quick victories But I don't know that they're really in a position to do much to follow that up. I could have him cross and consolidate our hold on Fredericksburg, which is considered under Union control now after those battles. But up till now, the success of this army has largely been because McDowell, that's who's commanding this army, was able to catch these two forces separately and not reinforcing each other. May not be able to do that for much longer. Meanwhile, after these two quick battles, ammunition is okay, but provisions and forage, basically food for troops, food for horses, is very low. And we've got a low food debuff here. Basically, they are under rations now, and the condition of the men is good. But for now, it's going to deteriorate until the supply situation is rectified. The supply situation is okay in that what's coming in, at least for now, is higher than what is on hand, or what the consumption rate is. So he is going to build back up his supplies. But at the moment, those supplies are not very high. And at the moment, the condition of the men is going to deteriorate in the short term. So if we light off here across Virginia and try to head down toward Richmond, that situation is probably going to continue to deteriorate, and these two forces, the two separate Confederate forces, may be able to marry up together, and the next battle that occurs may not be so lopsided in our favor. Part of the problem that the Confederates have had is that they've got, organizationally, they're kind of in that process that our army in the West is, in that they don't have all their guys yet. Army of the Potomac has only got 12,000 on hand, but they've got more troops coming up to a strength of 20,000. And these are intelligence estimates. These numbers could be a little off. And then kind of a similar thing with the Army of the Shenandoah. Currently only 6,500 on hand after that drubbing they just took, but almost another 10,000 men coming. So they retreat down here. We don't know how far away those troops are. I mean, the Army of the Potomac could jump up to 20,000 tomorrow. And same with the Shenandoah. So eventually, this force, and we don't know how eventually, could wind up being 35,000 men. While our army is currently sitting at just below 28 and is essentially at full strength, meaning there's no more brigades coming to this army. Losses are being slowly replenished, the casualties that they've taken, but there's not like another division coming or several more brigades. There is some manpower to do that, but not a whole lot. We've got 31,000 volunteers available, but a lot of those are earmarked for replacing losses in existing units, and quite a lot of those, our available manpower has largely gone to establish this army over here in the West. So basically, things have gone our way so far. But if I overextend down here and try to nab Richmond real quick, the tables could get turned. The other thing that's going on is this may not be a 28,000 army, 28,000 soldier army for very long. These troops initially came together. They're short-term volunteers, basically 90-day enlistments, and most of those 90 days are up. If we just look at some of these brigades. Here we are, 1st Brigade, 1st Division, Keys. 3-month enlistments, 20 days remaining. So 20 days from now, the strength of this brigade is going to evaporate. It won't be disestablished. More volunteers will come in, right? This is a Connecticut brigade, and available manpower out of Connecticut will replenish, but that's going to take some time. And most of these brigades are in similar situations. Kearney's brigade, 20 days left. Sherman's brigade, 20 days left. Porter, Burnside. Basically, most of the manpower of this army is not going to stick around for very long. Matter of fact, all of them. Which is why it was pretty important to get working on Militia Act 3 to extend the terms of enlistment. And then soon after that, I'm not sure it's going to be the next policy, but we want Military 2, which will increase our recruitment subsidies and will help with recruitment as well. So we're kind of at a point where we've kind of done what we can do, and there's going to be a transition period which will last several months, probably into the winter, before we've got kind of an army that's going to stick around for a couple years. Let's just see how Patterson's army is probably similar. Yeah, short-term enlistments. So what's going to happen here is it's July, so right around the 1st, 2nd week of August, we're going to take a big manpower hit as far as soldiers actually in the field, armed, operational. It'll get made back up out of the recruitment pool. That's going to take some time. All right, I think I've probably overstated that point. So what I'm going to do here for the next, in the short term, is come on up. And the Confederates do have similar issues, but we don't have a whole lot of visibility on exactly what their situation is. We just know it's somewhat similar to ours. So Department of Pennsylvania, this force is going to continue up here, as I've said before. Take Winchester, block off this area, kind of reduce the threat for an end run headed up north toward Washington, which is not imminent, but you know, I just want to block this off kind of forever. And then the Army of Northeastern Virginia is going to kind of hang out in this area and kind of consolidate our control right around here and make sure we keep Fredericksburg, maybe extend just far enough to kind of take control of Catherine Furnace if we can. And I am still kind of not sure what's going on with the supply depot right here. I keep getting this burning down status, and there's not very much here. It's almost empty of provisions, which is kind of the heaviest usage item. This is food for the troops, and there's not a lot of food here. most of the supply that McDowell is getting is coming out of Culpeper Courthouse, because that's considered under our control as well, now that we've won that battle and the Army of the Shenandoah is retreating. But I don't know if this is just going to continue to burn. I was off camera and I tried to look to see if I could repair this thing or stop it from burning down. Apparently not. But anyway, I'm just going to do those things that I said I was going to do, and we're just going to fast forward time a little bit. Yeah, and this is the Confederacy has kind of made buddies with the Native Americans. I think this is in the Oklahoma area. So there may be kind of some, oops, not managing that map very well. Kind of over in this area, there may be some additional kind of irregular forces that pop up, which goes right back to I don't really want this army to get itself in trouble because it's not very big. Just want to get them over here and consolidate our hold in St. Louis. Meanwhile, looks like, yep, there's been a naval fight off of Galveston and captured a couple of ships. Confederates are retreating back into port. That's a good thing. Captured a ship's tender gunboat, which is small with no armor and just 2 guns. I don't want to pay upkeep on that. And a schooner. 3 guns, no armor. Don't want to spend money on repairing and upkeep on that, particularly. A lot of these seagoing blockades are not fully on station. I assigned ships to them. For example, I assigned Pensacola to Texas blockade. They weren't at 100% over here in the pool. So this ship still needs to complete fitting out and everything before it comes. And all of these, well, Louisiana blockade is, force off New Orleans is pretty much on station now. Still another ship that needs to make it to Charleston. You get the idea. Yeah, I'm not interested in keeping that ship either, off of North Carolina. So this is pretty good news. Most of our ships are now on station with this Riverine squadron. Some of them still need some repairs, so they're import. But they're import up at St. Louis now. So at least geographically they're where they need to be. Still a couple of ships that need to make it to Pensacola. This is the smaller force in the Chesapeake Bay. I called them the Chesapeake Light Squadron just to make it crystal clear that this is the shallow water force. There are a fair number of ships in it. And then all the Virginia seagoing blockade force, they're on station now. It's a pretty strong force. although a lot of them are also in harbor for repairs. So that's going to take some time. But as those ships all get up to 100% readiness and get on station, again, that blockade percentage will slowly creep up over time. All right. Patterson is moving really slow. You're killing me. Let's move McDowell right up into Culpeper. Okay, that supply depot is just gone. He's going to have to build another one. So we will do that. Also, with the two battles, he's also dropped down in readiness a good bit too. He started that little campaign up here in the green. He's down to mid-yellow. Let's get a fort going. Right here near the river crossing. Let's also get a supply depot going. Harper's Ferry has now come under Union control. I'm going to move Patterson right up into Winchester. Actually, a little bit past Winchester. I'm going to plop a fort right here on this crossroads. Telegraph stations get built pretty quickly within just a few days. Supply depots take, I don't know, about 2 to 3 weeks. And then forts take a while. They're 49 days for this fort. And yeah, both of these Confederate forces have now combined and are increasing in size. Kind of like that fort right in here, but it's not letting me. That'll work. Now, when armies or corps, later on, these will be corps, when they just kind of sit for a while, they're not completely useless. First of all, they can build stuff, as I'm doing, but also, when in a encamped status, the troops are also training. So just a couple of days ago, the Army of Northeastern Virginia was showing untrained status, and already And some of that experience probably comes from battle as well. But now, just a couple of days later, they've bumped up, and now they're merely poor training. So there is some value to kind of sitting on your butt for a while. But this comes up pretty slow. It can take a couple of years, even with a lot of sitting around. It can take a couple of years to get up to the higher levels of training. And again, that turnover of troops plays into that. They might drop back down to untrained here in a few days whenever all those 90-day volunteers go back home. Now, a lot of them will re-enlist, but that'll be reflected in this manpower pool. Rather than just re-enlisting right there in their unit on the spot. This is just kind of a standard thing that always happens right at the beginning of the war. This isn't a policy or anything. It was just right at the beginning. The first articulated policy was to preserve the Union, but for now they weren't doing anything about slavery. That will, of course, change. Okay, McDowell's back up into the green, barely. Forage is coming back up nicely. Still low on provisions. And most of that is coming in via Culpeper Courthouse. This supply depot's gone over here, and this one is still building. So for now, he's dependent on this town that he just took for supply. Let me see here a message. Union has issued bonds. Pretty much the story of finance in this game. I think I talked about this before, but unlike most other computer games, there is no such thing as maintaining a positive flow. There will be deficit spending, a lot of it. And so the goal financially is to keep the credit rating of the government high enough to continue issuing bonds and using deficit spending. And there's a few other things you could do. Eventually there will be a corporate tax. There's a policy where you can institute an income tax, that sort of thing. But at no point will that overcome the red ink. It's going to be deficit spending all the way through, and you're just trying to maintain the financial situation where you've got a credit rating to continue issuing bonds. So right now we're at triple B. We started the game at A, or A plus even, but just the cost of starting to, I think probably the main thing we've spent money on did build some ships to reinforce the blockade that are building, and the establishment of this additional army in the West, I think, has sucked up most of our government expenditure compared to the start of the game. And then there's some money going into building this fort, into building the supply depot. So we've dropped down to a triple B rating, which is still pretty good. But if you drop down to single, below this, and there's minuses and pluses too. There at some point there will be a triple B minus, and then a double B plus, and it keeps going down. And each one of those little increments is, you can bump that back up with policies. But if it gets down, B is like the lowest. If you go below B, now the credit rating of the government has reached a low enough point where you can't recruit troops anymore or build ships. So we don't want to go that low. And the way you stay ahead of that is with economic policies. Like this first government funding gets you another 2+2 credit rating, and that'll bump your rating back up. And there's several of these. Government funding 2, war bonds. And then there's some other policies that increase your cash flow, like the Revenue Act is what imposes, this imposes the income tax, which helps the financial situation, but pisses off the citizens, and you get lower support in the various states. So it's all a balancing act. And then later on you can increase the income tax, and you can institute a corporate tax, and now you get business mad at you. So eventually you need to do a lot of these, but you don't want to just do them willy-nilly any more than you have to as the campaign goes along. Oh, I've been sitting here paused. Let's get rolling again. What are we doing over here? Looks like a Confederate army that we cannot see. So there's some force over here building this supply depot. This militia force is now up in the green readiness. Another naval victory. That's good. Okay, so this is a policy. The Confederacy has now gone with privateering. That will increase their effect. I mean, we are imposing trade war losses on them via blockade. The Confederacy is doing the same to us via privateering and raiders out, in the Atlantic. And to be honest, there's not really much you can do about that. If there is, I haven't really found it. You can, during one previous campaign, I kind of took a bunch of ships and I just put them patrolling up in this area off the Union ports, hoping that would do something. It really didn't. So I feel like there's something I don't know there about how to counteract Confederate raiding and privateering. And how we've gone so far is just here in the first about month of the war, we have imposed $677,000 worth of losses with our blockade, but they're not far behind. They've done about 600,000 to us in raiding, not all of which is naval raiding. They could have done a lot of that via raiding on land as well. Well, no, it says right here, blockades and privateering. So we're kind of equal right now on the trade warfare at sea. And I don't really know how to counteract that. Provisions are coming back up for McDowell, but he's still in the low food condition. Hasn't dropped far enough to drop him out of good condition, though. That's a good thing. Oh, so there's Wilcox, who we had gotten a message that he had been a little bit. His name was tarnished for his brigade breaking. Now apparently that is cleared, and people think he's a good dude again. And that's new in 1.05. Before that, when an officer got defamed, he was just done. You couldn't do anything with the guy anymore. Even if he had good stats and everything, if you put him in command, it just kind of pissed off the troops. And best you could do was maybe stick him up in a northern or far southern if you're Confederate. Just put him in a fort somewhere, maybe. And hope it didn't get attacked. Okay, and you can see it right there. A lot of those troops are starting to go home, and McDowell has lost 10,000 in strength. And that's just enlistments expiring. Let's take a look at some of these brigades again. Keyes has something like 2,000. He's down to 1,500 men. Kearney's down to less than 1,000. Sherman's at 1,200. And so on, so forth, and so on. Meanwhile, the intelligence estimates are not showing a drop-off for the Confederates. So this combined force is now significantly stronger than ours. So I feel a little bit vindicated in not pushing further after these two initial victories. Oh man, Patterson's down to below 10,000 now. He's lost about half of his strength for expiring enlistments. Now that's not forever. Those will slowly come back up, but they're going to come back up pretty slowly. Oh. Well, let's see what's happening here. It looks like the Army of the Potomac is going to come back and make another. What's he doing? I'm going to put these. You can place an army in guard status, which kind of helps a little bit on guarding supply trains. And it also uses the cavalry to kind of tamp down a little bit on desertion and routed men. But when you do that, it takes cavalry out of the order of battle because you're giving them this other job. We don't have any cavalry in any of our units now. Raid, pretty self-explanatory. It moves through enemy territory. It helps with forage. It helps with supply because you're living off the land. But it also, pisses off the locals. Which, if you're deep in enemy territory, may be fine. We don't want to do that in West Virginia because we want this to become a Union state pretty soon. And I'm going to put them on Scout, which is also a cavalry-oriented thing. And we don't have cavalry here, but having them in Scout mode kind of just improves their visibility a little bit. They can see a little bit further. And I think that happens even when they don't have any cavalry in the force. So it improves your intel picture. And it also can unlock some of these perks. Like if you use scouting a lot, it improves that army's visibility anyway. So I'm gonna put all these on Scout just to kind of keep a better view of what's going on some distance away from them. It may not be doing that much, but it's not going to hurt. What are these guys doing? Is he coming across the river? Nope. I think what's happening there is he's trying to move back north, but he stops as soon as he gets visibility on. Nope, here he comes. I just lost viz on him. Yep, there we go. Shit, and he's got the army of the Shenandoah able to reinforce. So we got 28,000 Confederates coming up against our 17,000. I kind of feel like I just let myself get bushwhacked there. With Longstreet in command. Okay, well, I think that is going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching.